Welcome back, everybody. Ready to dive deep again.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Always ready to get into it.
Well, this time we're looking at something kind of a big topic. It's on a lot of people's minds. I think it's how things are going economically, especially for those who are, well, let's just say, not exactly rolling in dough right now.
Yeah. It's a crucial topic for sure. We all went through that crazy inflation roller coaster back in 2022, right?
You tell me about it. I mean, some things have chilled out a bit since then, thankfully, but let's be real. Not everyone's feeling that relief equally.
Right. And that's exactly what we're going to unpack
We've
today.
got data. There's always got to have the data.
Of course.
But also, real stories to help us understand what's actually happening out there. And who knows, maybe a curveball or two along the way, right?
And there's always a twist.
Always. So to kick things off, what's the overall picture looking like? Everyone's talking about inflation cooling down, but is it really all sunshine and roses?
Well, it's a bit more nuanced than that. While it's true the inflation rate has dipped, prices are still significantly higher than they were before the pandemic hit, like way higher.
Serious.
We're talking a total increase of over 22% since January 2020.
Wow, over 22%.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's got to be hitting people's wallets pretty hard, even if it's not as, panic-inducing as it was a couple years back.
Exactly. Even if things feel a little calmer at the checkout line, the reality is that for a lot of people, that buying power just isn't what it used to be.
Yeah, that makes sense. So it's not just about the price tags themselves. It's about how much those dollars actually stretch.
Precisely. And this isn't just some abstract economic theory we're talking about. This impacts real lives, To give you an idea, almost 30% of U.S. households are spending pretty much all of their income on just the absolute essentials: housing, food, utilities.
100%. That's a huge portion of the population.
It is. And for those earning under $50,000 a year, that number jumps even higher to 35%.
Wow. I mean, just imagine trying to make every dollar stretch to cover those basic needs with hardly anything left for, well, anything else.
It's a tough reality for a lot of folks, and to really drive that point home, we've got the story of Chugo Akuwobi, a 26-year-old who's been navigating some pretty rough economic waters.
Oh, yeah. Chugo's story is a powerful one.
It really highlights how these statistics, they represent real people, real struggles. Chugo had to leave a difficult situation back in Houston, and it's been a tough road, relying on food banks, the kindness of friends, just trying to make ends meet.
It's amazing how resilient people can be in the face of adversity, but also it's just heartbreaking to think about, someone with a college degree working hard and still struggling like this.
Absolutely. Chigo estimates earning less than $10,000 this year, even with contract jobs. And this is really where the impact of inflation and these high interest rates hit low-income households the hardest. They often have less of a financial cushion to absorb those sudden increases in costs.
It's like trying to run a marathon without, I don't know, enough fuel or something. You're already starting at a disadvantage.
I like that analogy. And it's important to note that there was a period, early 2023, where wages actually grew faster than inflation, especially for lower-income workers. So there was a glimmer of hope there.
So for a moment, it seemed like maybe things were turning a corner.
It did seem that way. But unfortunately, that trend has reversed. The gap between wage growth and inflation, it's widening again, putting folks who had briefly seen some relief right back in that precarious position.
Oh, so they almost caught up, and then boom, falling behind again.
Yeah, that's the unfortunate reality. And we're seeing this play out in the retail world, too. Stores like Dollar General and Walmart, the ones catering to budget-conscious shoppers, they're doing really well while other retailers are struggling.
Huh. That's interesting. So our everyday shopping habits can be a pretty clear indicator of what's happening in the bigger economic picture, huh?
Absolutely. It shows how these trends, they're not just abstract concepts. They're playing out in the choices people are making every single day.
Makes you think, right? Now, remember that curveball we mentioned earlier? Well, it looks like there might be something brewing that could make this whole situation even more complicated.
Yes. You're talking about President-elect Trump's proposed tariffs on imports from some of our major trading partners, right? Now, this is something that could have a major impact on prices.
Wait, tariffs? Those things that caused prices to go haywire a few years back.
The very same. And while the current situation is different from that 2021 inflation spike, economists are estimating that these tariffs could push prices up by another 0.75%.
I guess that doesn't sound too bad on the surface, but...
But it translates to roughly $1,200 less buying power per household every year. And remember, that's on top of the price increases we're already dealing with.
Oof. Okay, so it's like a double whammy, right? Lingering inflation And now these tariffs potentially adding fuel to the fire.
Precisely. And it really makes you wonder what makes this potential wave of inflation different, maybe even tougher to weather than the last one.
Well, I guess a lot of people aren't as prepared this time around. Didn't folks manage to save some money during the pandemic?
Yeah.
And weren't there like support programs back then that helped too?
You're spot on. Those safety nets are mostly gone now. Many households have used up those savings, and those support programs have ended, leaving them far more vulnerable to these new challenges.
So basically less wiggle room to handle those price hikes. That's a sobering thought, especially when you think back to Chugo's story. That struggle to make ends meet, it's a powerful reminder of how these economic trends, they have a real human impact.
It's so crucial to remember that human element. These aren't just numbers on a spreadsheet. We're talking about real families, real people making tough choices every day. It's a complicated picture for sure.
Right. On one hand, inflation's slowing down a bit, some wage growth happening, that's got to be good. But then you got these looming challenges, tariffs and all that could really throw a wrench in things, especially for those already struggling.
Yeah, it feels like we're on a roller coaster that they haven't even finished building yet.
Exactly.
But we keep tossing around this word tariffs. What's the real impact there? Like, would everything just suddenly become way more expensive?
That's a good question. It's not really about everything getting pricier. It's more targeted than that. Think about goods that we import a lot of from, well, those countries being targeted. Electronics, car parts, even some groceries could be affected.
So not a blanket price hike, more like strategic strikes on certain things.
Yeah.
But even then, wouldn't that have a ripple effect? Like, what if those car parts you mentioned get more expensive because of tariffs? You got it. More expensive car parts mean pricier repairs, maybe even new cars go up. And that can impact businesses that rely on transportation. They might have to raise their prices too, so it's a chain reaction.
Wow. So even if the initial impact is focused, it can spread out like crazy. It's like a spider web, right? Touch one part, the whole thing shakes.
Perfect analogy. And remember, all this is happening while interest rates are still up there, making it even tougher to borrow money. That can put the brakes on the whole economy.
It's like trying to walk through a maze blindfolded with booby traps everywhere. No wonder people are nervous about the future.
I don't blame them, but remember, things in economics, they're rarely set in stone. They change constantly, lots of factors at play. What we're seeing now is just a snapshot. Things could swing in another direction depending on how it all interacts.
True. I mean, a few years back, who could have predicted a global pandemic turning everything upside down?
Yeah.
It does feel like we're living in a permanent what's next moment.
You said it. That's why it's so important to stay informed, understand what's driving things, and have real conversations about potential solutions. We can't control everything, but we can be ready to adapt, right?
Okay, so we've talked about the challenges, the potential risks, all the uncertainties swirling around the economy, especially for those with lower incomes.
Yeah.
But it feels like we're missing a piece here. What about the solutions? We can't just leave folks hanging without exploring ways to navigate this whole mess right.
You are absolutely right. It's easy to get bogged down in all the doom and gloom, but there are always ways to take action, both individually and as a community. Even small steps can make a difference, especially when we work together.
Okay, so let's switch gears here. What can people do on their own to protect themselves and their families when the economy's this unpredictable?
Well, first things first, building a financial safety net. Even a small emergency fund can make a huge difference when unexpected costs pop up.
Right, it's like having a spare tire, right?
Yeah.
You might not need it often, but boy, are you glad you have it when you do.
Exactly. And beyond saving, looking for ways to boost your income can be a big help. Maybe a side gig, learning new skills for better paying jobs, even trying to negotiate a raise at your current job.
Love that. It's about taking control, even when things feel out of control.
Exactly. Empowerment and resilience. That's the key. And hey, even if you're not directly impacted by these economic struggles, you can still help those who are. Volunteering, community involvement, advocating for policies that support those with lower incomes, all of that makes a difference.
It's a great reminder that we're in this together, right? Even small acts of kindness and support can help build a stronger community for everyone.
That's what it's all about. Creating a sense of shared responsibility, understanding that a strong economy means everyone has a chance to succeed, no matter their income.
So we've talked about what individuals can do, but what about the bigger picture? What kind of policies, societal shifts could really make a difference for folks struggling to get by?
That's the million-dollar question, right? Lots of different viewpoints on this, all sorts of solutions being debated. One thing that comes up a lot is needing a stronger social safety net. Things like better unemployment benefits, easier access to affordable health care, raising the minimum wage, that's all part of the discussion.
It's about giving people a stronger foundation to stand on, especially when the economy throws a curveball their way. But what about the cost of living itself? It seems like that's a huge part of the problem, too.
Absolutely right. Housing especially. Policies that create more affordable housing options that could be game-changing for those barely keeping a roof over their heads.
It's amazing how intertwined everything is. We've talked about inflation, wages, tariffs, and now housing and social safety nets. Makes you realize you need a multi-pronged approach to tackle these issues.
It is a complex web, but not impossible to figure out. And the more we understand how it all connects, the better we can push for real change.
So what does all of this mean for our listeners, for everyday people trying to make sense of the economy and where they fit in?
I think it's a call to action, a chance to really dig into these issues. It's about staying informed, asking the tough questions, and understanding the different perspectives that shape our economic reality.
It's about recognizing that the challenges are real, but so is our ability to find solutions and build a better, fairer society for everyone. And with that in mind, I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive.
Wow, this has been quite a conversation, hasn't it? We've really covered a lot of ground here, from those lingering inflation effects to these new tariffs and what they might mean, and even like zooming out to the bigger societal impacts of all this.
Yeah, it's been a lot to take in. Kind of feels like we peeked behind the curtain a bit, right?
Yeah.
Got a glimpse of how these forces are really shaping our economy and ultimately our lives.
For sure. And, for me, what really stands out is that while we've talked a lot about numbers, trends, all that, it's the human stories that really bring it all home. Like Shiugo's experience, it's a powerful reminder that economic hardship isn't just some abstract concept, it's real people's lives.
Absolutely. It's so easy to get lost in the statistics, but when you hear about someone actually struggling to, put food on the table, find a decent place to live, build a future despite all the obstacles, that's when it really hits you.
It underscores the need for solutions that aren't just, economically sound, but also compassionate and fair. Solutions that recognize everyone's dignity and aim to create a society where everyone has a chance to thrive, regardless of their income.
Well said. So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the one key takeaway you hope our listeners will walk away with? That one thought that'll stick with them long after the episode's over?
I think it circles back to that idea of interconnectedness. The economy isn't some separate entity operating in a vacuum. It's a reflection of us, our choices, our values, our priorities as a society.
Interesting.
And by recognizing that connection, by engaging in these conversations, by advocating for policies that promote both economic growth, social well-being, that's how we create a better future, a more just and prosperous future for everyone.
That's a powerful thought. It's a reminder that we all have a role to play in shaping our economic landscape, both through our individual actions and by being part of the bigger conversation. And on that note, we'll bring this deep dive to a close. Thanks for joining us, everyone, and we'll see you next time for another fascinating exploration.